Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. It's here, so let's see what we got. This will be the start of another sequence of videos. And see if we've got anything different this time. Thank you. No, it's got no company logo. Looks like smaller pieces this time. Actually, yes, I did ask for the next grade down, not the chunky stuff, the medium stuff. So that's what we've got. There's no company logo on it, so I'm now relying on the fact that on their website, where I ordered it from, did I order it from their website? Can't remember. It did say washed and ready to use. Now Michael McCarthy says the first soak he does his is in virtually boiling water. So his first soak goes in just off the boiled water for an hour or so, and then that gets rinsed and then put into soak. So we can get that part done. I'm looking at the volume here. So the thing is, when Ed did his, he's got buckets, and it's just dawned on me, I do have a bucket, but it's hiding and it's full of stuff. But if I empty the stuff out, I've got a bucket. That gives me a large volume of water. My worry is the amount of RO water. But at the end of the day, it's a one-off. Once it's done, isn't it? And then it is forever ready to use. So it might be worth doing. So right, we'll the first soak. If the first soak is going to be in virtually boiling water, that'll have to be in the saucepan. We'll put boiling water in a plastic bucket. It's not the best of ideas. So we'll get that done in the kitchen. Right, let's see how much we've got then. I think this is a lot less than last time. I don't know though. That's it, make a mess, why don't you? I always say with any mess it'll all clean up. Right, this is absolutely bone dust dry. So, oh, it's got a feather in it. I don't know if that's an English feather or a foreign feather. Yeah. Right, so the kettle is boiled, so let's get the first soak on the go then. Now, one kettle might not be enough because this is going to absorb a hell of a lot. So we might need a second kettle full. Oh, I don't know, it's coming up to the top. Wooden spoon for packing it down. No, one kettle's not going to do that. This virtually all absorbed, that kettle full. So we'll put another kettle on. I'm not using RO water at the moment. I'm just using my jug water. Right, be back in a minute. Right. Another kettle full. We should see some water now. I reckon most of that first kettle full went into it. Yeah, I can see water now. Right, so right, now obviously that's hot water. It won't be boiling now because of the media itself will have taken some of the heat out. So that's got to stay in soak for a while till it sort of cools off. So an hour or so, I suppose. That'll be after tea, won't it? And then we're going to give it a rinse, drain it off, give it a good rinse, and then leave it to soak in RO water, and that'll be its first soak. And I will take a TDS reading at the start of the soak. There's no point in doing it yet because I'm not using RO water yet. So we'll get to the first time that the stuff is actually put in RO water. Some of the jug water that's been used to do this will still be in it, obviously. That will leach out. So some of the first TDS reading will be a bit of that. But what I don't want to see is a major increase from the initial reading. The initial reading, once I put the RO water in theory, the diffusion of the content of the media, what it's soaked up, into the much larger volume of RO water should be quick. Give it a squeeze in that water, that TDS at that point should be pretty stable. Then the 24-hour soak is what leaches out after that point, so that's where we'll get to. So that's got to cool down and everything, and as I say, I shall probably have my tea in the meantime. I'll be back. Yay, I found a bucket, and that, the lid for the saucepan, that took a long time to find, and boy was that in a stupid place. It was with the other lids for the other saucepans. I don't think they've ever been used. But I need the lid to drain the water out. So the idea is we'll get this water drained. God, this is heavy. One-handed. So that should allow the... Oh, that's a lovely deep brown colour, isn't it? So we've still got the tanning issue. Tanning, sorry, not tanning. You wouldn't want to tan that colour, that's for sure. I'm not going to get all of this water out, I'm just going to drain the bulk of it. And then we have a bucket with nearly full, and this is a rinse. So I'm putting that in gently because I don't want it to sploop. Ah, there we go. And then we'll give that a good stir. It's amazing how much water that soaked up. Incredible amount. What we saw when I filled the saucepan up, I've had to top that saucepan up quite a few times. And the idea is we just give this a... This has been well thought out, isn't it? How am I going to drain this now in the bucket? I think we might have to just pour it in the sink. I hadn't thought that through, had I? The saucepan I'd thought through. Find the lid, and then we can you know, do the normal thing. But yeah, I've got to drain this out now, but and the easiest way to do that is just pour it in the sink, I think. Which means getting the saucepan out. We won't need that anymore. We're into buckets now from now on. We'll just put the drain in. And this is just what you call it, water at the moment, the jug water. So this is a rinse. Followed by a drain. We're not after perfection or anything here, we're just after and we've got to get it out of the sink and back into the bucket, which we will just use the saucepan as a transfer. This was a 2.5 litre pack. Now obviously it doesn't show as 2.5 litres when you get it because it's dry, and as it soaks up the water it does expand to a degree, but as a medium for all your orchids, that 2.5 litres, which is what we're looking at here, was nearly £9. Now, given the amount of Orchiata bark I would buy in a sack, which was, the sacks of Orchiata were just under £30, this is considerably more expensive than what was supposedly the quality bark. So this is not a cheap option by any means. Right, so back in the bucket with a dirty hand. I know a lot of this is off the camera, but I can't keep swinging that round all the time. So we've had a soak in boiling water, then we've drained that out, we've given it a rinse in quite a reasonable volume of water, albeit jug water. I'll be straight back. Right, and now we switch to our own water. As I said, luckily this is a one-off, because I mean this is a 5 litre container of RO water, and I consider the RO water a precious thing. Just to get 5 litres of RO water, there's 15 odd litres have gone down the drain. It's quite a wasteful process. I always think of this as quite a precious resource because of the waste. Right, that's my steering spoon. Right, we're now to the 24-hour soak period now. Just making sure it's well mixed in. Now obviously, although that was RO water went in there, what we've got is not pure RO water, because some of the water from the contents of the media will have leached out. But I want a starting TDS at the beginning of a 24-hour soak. And that says 65. So our starting point is a TDS of 65. After 24 hours, if this was washed and ready for use, I would not expect a serious change. If you remember, the other stuff went up to around 900, TDS of 900. We don't want any silly nonsense like that. And hopefully a fair bit of the colour has come out with the boil soak, you know, with the boiling water. Right, so 24 hours, we will come back, we will have a look at the colour of the water, and we'll have a look at the TDS. And then we've got another drain, and the next soak is a bit special because it's going to have calcium nitrate and magnesium sulfate in it. The idea being that that will lock on to salts and get them in a state where they will rinse out. Now this goes back to something I didn't understand at the time, which was Ed's idea of using magnesium sulfate as a flush. And I did say at the time that technically it can't be a flush simply because it's a feed element. And if you put a feed element in your pots, it's not a flush because it's not clean water. But what you do is you use that to lock on to any excess salts and grab hold of them, which should then be followed by another proper flush with clean water, which washes out everything. And that's the theory with this. So we put those two elements in here, and then when we rinse after that, we should have a product that is usable. But let's get this 24-hour soak done first. We'll worry about that. Oh God, it's 9 o'clock at night. It might be longer than a 24-hour soak, simply to get through to the next day, or it might be shorter. It might be like 20 hours instead. A couple of hours isn't going to make much difference, is it? Right, until the next time. What a performance. I certainly wouldn't do this as my main media, but I'm determined to carry on with the experiment. Right, first job, we've had, it's not 24 hours, but it's a reasonable soak. And quite honestly, we still have a lot of tannin. That is still a lot of colour. But we've still got time for some of that to disappear. So that's that. Now if you remember when I put this into soak, we basically could have had a TDS rise, even though it was a short space of time, because I'd used my jug water, which has a TDS of 150 to 170, depending on how new the filter is. So what I'm after is the increase from a TDS of 65 in not far off 24 hours. And the TDS now is 200. So that's an increase of 100 and something, 135, something like that. Now 135, a TDS of 135 is higher than I would feed some of my orchids. You know, my Cooler Shadia, Masdevallia, Draculas, that's higher than I would ever feed them. So I don't need a TDS like that. Yeah. So effectively we have a TDS of 200. Now let's see how far we can get that down. That's the next plan of action. So we can get that out of the way for now. And what we need to do now is drain that. And this time I will squeeze as much water out of it as I possibly can to make sure we're starting with, it won't be dry, oh my God, but it won't be far off it. So the idea is to chuck it in the sink and let it drain. I'm just going to rinse that slightly because I've got a load of stuff still in the bucket. A little bit of tap water won't hurt. Bearing in mind it's soaking wet, it's not exactly going to soak in a lot more, is it? And there's a saturation point with anything where nothing else can be absorbed because it's full up to the brim. That's the idea of chucking your vandas in a bucket. There comes a point where that plant via those roots can't absorb any more during this session. It's full, and that's the objective. Right, now I'll get some more RO water, and this is going through my RO water like, I mean, my main stock of water is my 3 5-litre containers, and this is the second one I've used, and I'm going to need a third. So that gives us a suitable bucket full of RO water. Much to my annoyance, but that's how it has to be. Right, now the saucepan is here to get the stuff out of the sink back into there in a minute after I've squeezed it. It's the only reason that's there. Now what we've got to do is get some calcium in there. Bearing in mind we've got 5 litres. I haven't got a clue how much I need, but basically my instructions are that I need enough that the TDS reading of this water is greater than the value of the salts in the media. That way this water will suck out those salts. This is a theory that I have little understanding of, but I'll go with those that know, or those that have done it before and it worked. Let's get me stirring spoon. So the idea is we had a TDS of 200 in the water that the media was in. So the resulting TDS of this needs to be higher than that, even though this will have been drained. It's not getting rinsed this time. This is the rinse water in effect. Right, so that was the calcium, wasn't it? Right, what have we got then? This is not the important one. Right, that's a TDS of just over 200. The important one is this one, the Epsom Salts, because this is the goodies. This is the stuff that latches on to other. You know, if this was a nutrient solution, this would be a big deal. But the Epsom Salts magnesium sulfate has a habit of locking on to other nutrients and bonding with them, and as such messes up your feed. So this in excess quantities is not good, because it will bond with other nutrients and effectively change their makeup and in as much lock them out. So too much of this is not good. But in this case, it's exactly what I want. I'm using its naughtiness, if you see what I mean. The fact that this is, in effect, a way of bonding with other nutrients, salts, yeah, and locking them out, it then gives me the ability to be able to rinse them out with clean water, having bonded them all together. That's the theory behind what I'm doing. Now I suspect the overall TDS of this is going to be about 350, maybe even 400. We will check. Oh, I left my thingy on. It will go shut down eventually. Oh crikey, we've overdone it a bit, but no worries. The TDS of that is 710. That's a large quantity of Epsom salts. Right, now what we've got to do, I'll shut the camera off of this bit. What I've got to do now is squeeze that media and get as much water out as possible, transport it back into here, into there, and then we've got another 24 hours to go. So I'll just shut down for a minute. Okay, so this is the last of the drained media. And quite honestly, I was giving this as hard a squeeze as I could, and not much water was coming out. So it had actually drained quite efficiently. Now that's quite different to the previous stuff, and it could just be its age. In other words, because this is newer, it doesn't hold quite as much water, or it isn't as soggy. Therefore it's not as easy to squeeze water out of it. It was allowing a little bit to be squeezed out, but not a lot. So when it went in here, it wasn't dripping wet. Now, there's no point in taking the TDS reading now, no point at all. The objective is another 24 hours. No doubt some more tannin will come out. And hopefully, mainly the Epsom salts will suck and lock on to salts that are left in there, which shouldn't be that much. If you think this time round, we were only at a TDS of 200, 65 of which was the water, not what came out of the media. So we're getting there an awful lot quicker than we did before. Right, so what's going to happen now is 24 hours needs to pass. We will then have to take the TDS. We will then need to tip this away and drain it, like I've just done now. We will then need a rinse. So I will now need another 5 litre container of RO water to give it a good rinse and a good stir round, and then drain it again, and then, because I want to, another 24-hour soak in RO water. Having rinsed out the content of this water with what I've just put in it, plus any salts that it extracts, drain that, rinse it again. In theory at that point we have pretty clean media. So then we top that up with RO water, take the TDS at that point, give it another 24 hours, and as far as I'm concerned, it's either usable at that point or it's not. I'm not going any further than that. This is enough faffing around for one plant in my case. I mean, it could be that for you it could be a lot of plants, but this is a fuss and a faff that quite honestly would need to achieve amazing results to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, I just won't grow those plants. Simple as that, because this is a faff and I'm not prepared to do this over and over again. So for the one plant I've got, we will see if this is good stuff. I will probably find some other plants to use it with, as I've got it now. But I'm not going mad with this, that's for sure. That's far too much fuss. And given the volume that I've got here that costs around £9, a reasonable sized plant would probably use a third of this. So £3 to repot a plant for media alone. That's pushing it. But we'll see how we go. So that's how far we've got so far. On to the next one. Okay, in this session what we've got to do is put this in the sink and let it drain. Give it a good squeeze and bring it back to the bucket, which at that point will have RO water in it. Give it a good stir, give it a good slosh around, that will be its rinse. That's then got to go back in the sink and drain and be squeezed out, yeah? Then it will be brought back to the bucket with just RO water, and we will give it another 24 hours. At the point we bring it back for the last time before the soak for 24 hours, we will take the TDS, which should be pretty basic at that point. Having just had loads of water sloshed all over it. But this is something I am interested in, is what colour is the water at the moment? At last. We've gone from beer to pale ale. Well, you could even say lager. It's nearly white wine. But we're losing the tannin dramatically. That is a hell of a reduction in colour. Given that that's been in there 24 hours, yeah? So, and it's had a good stir around. So we're losing the tannin, which was part of the plan. Or it's not really part of the plan because it might not have happened. But it was a hope more than anything. Right, so that's got to go in the sink with the plug in, obviously. Whoops, slop all over the place. Shall I bother rinsing this out? It's not really worth it. There's so little material left in the bucket, I can just get it out by hand. Make sure it goes in the sink. So that's got to go down the plug hole now, slowly but surely. And not quite sure why it isn't going down the plug hole. Oh yes, it is, just very, very gently. I think the plug hole's still clogged up from last night's session. Right, make sure we clean the plug hole tonight. Right, so there's no need, as I don't film the stuff that's going on in the sink, as I said, what will happen now is we will get our water in. Used up a lot of RO water doing this, but if I don't use RO water, I'm contaminating the readings by using water from another source, like either my jug water or the tap water, which defeats the object. Well, honestly, the idea is to get a product that is neutral, ready to use, as it was sold. Washed and ready for use is how it was sold. The trade's description, people. Is it sold specifically for orchids? Washed and ready to use is not what I'm getting. Okay, so I'll shut the camera off. As I've said, I'll now give this a good squeeze and bring it back into that water. That's a rinse. Give it a good slosh round. Back into the sink again. Give it a squeeze as I bring it back into a clean lot of water. We'll then take the TDS and that'll be tonight's session. So I'll shut the camera off just for now. Okay, so that's been drained in the sink and been given a good squeeze, which has turned out to be a problem. It's a problem that is difficult to describe because it's almost stupid, but I was packing some orchids to go this afternoon, and you've often seen with the boxes of orchids that I get from speciotic plants, they put a stick in the pot the length of the box that effectively holds the pot rigid in the box and stops it rolling around and You know, when Postman Pat gets up to his antics, like they play catch in the car park and things with your box. And I am exaggerating. But basically, to do the same thing, I had one of those thick sticks that needed to be cut shorter. So I got my heavy duty cutters. You've seen me use them in the kitchen before to cut thick rhizomes, secateurs effectively. And when I cut the stick, it went all of a sudden and it jarred my hand, and I've got pain all up through here. So a strain or a sprain, I don't know the difference. I don't really care, so I don't want a big medical history of the difference, but that hurts. To actually spread my fingers out flat, that actually hurts. So squeezing this stuff out, I'm right-handed, so I'm trying to do it with my left hand, which is it's not working that well really. So the squeezing out bit is not so good. See, my hand when it's closed is actually okay, so I can use this stirring stick with just a bit of a twinge, we'll call it. But trying to use my hand and actually squeeze this stuff out was painful. Now that's going to be ligaments, I suspect, or something like that. You haven't really got much muscle in your hand. I think it's just going to be ligaments or something. Nothing's going to be torn or ripped or anything dramatic, but something hurts. And when my back was bad, I actually got some cream that is effectively the same as taking the painkiller tablets, except for you put it on externally and it soaks in, and apparently works a lot quicker. So we might give, if this is still hurting at bedtime, it could stop me sleeping properly, so we may give that a go. So, good slosh round in clean water, back in the sink now, and the sink was blocked up, that's why it took a long time to drain. So that was blocked up from yesterday, because I've been out all day today. Oh, see, just lifting the bucket actually hurts. So I've done something to that hand. So that's going to be one of those things we'll have to wait and see what the hell it's like in the morning, won't we? Don't all rush to say go to the doctor. I am not going anywhere near a doctor's surgery. Even if I could get in, I don't want to go in. It's where all the ill people are. So, I would say if you have any chance of catching this virus, hospitals and doctors and dentists are a surefire hit, because of the sheer volume of people that go through them. You know, it's a percentage game. You can walk round a town and you get within a metre or two of, what, a couple of dozen people? You go in a room that's had people coming and going all day long, yeah, I'm not doing it. I'll take some tablet. So this is the last of my 5 litre containers. So that's 15 litres plus the 2 containers over there, which are officially 2.4 litres. So 2 of them is near enough 5 litres. So that's 20 litres of RO water to get to the stage we're at now. Right, so I've now got to squeeze that dry and get it in there, so I'll do that off camera again. There's a saying that says, when I do this, it hurts. The response should be, well, stop doing it then, dopey. And this is all hurting, this hand. It just, that weighs enough that it hurts. So my right hand is now messed up. Hopefully it will sort itself out overnight. As I said, when my fingers are closed round, it's not so bad. But to use it to pick stuff up doesn't work. I'm alright doing this. This is just gentle stuff, even though it's twinging. So whatever I've done to it is hopefully a night's rest will get rid of it, let's put it that way. If not, then in the morning we'll have to do something about it. But that'll just be painkillers. It can't be anything dramatic. All I did was click a pair of secateurs shut. It's just they snapped suddenly as they went through that stick. Right, so we've hopefully rinsed out all of the calcium and magnesium. and that should have dragged out lots of other stuff at the same time by bonding with it. So that went down the sink. We then rinsed everything in clean water and then drained that out and give it a bit of a squeeze, left-handed. That wasn't working with the other hand. And now we've put it back into clean water. And this is its last soak, according to my instructions. So the next time this is drained out, it should be, because it's okay to use. It might need another rinse, we'll decide that later. But what I am going to do is check the TDS of what we've got now. This should not be too much above 10, not with the fact it's been rinsed. Okay, it's 35, so there's still an element of something, some residue, that's raised that TDS to 35. Now if after 24 hours it's within 20, I'll say, let's say it's less than 50, then given that it's going to, if it ever got used for orchids, the first thing that would happen would be get watered. That's another rinse, yeah, and then every time the orchid gets flushed it's another rinse. So you're forever decreasing whatever's left in it by actually using it with a plant, if you see what I mean. So if this has a low TDS after 24 hours and the colour is still very, very pale, then I'll say it's okay. Then, somehow or other, we've got to try and dry it, because I'm going to need to store it. If you store it wet, it'll probably grow mould. Yeah? It's not ideal. So it ought to be dried. And I haven't got an oven, not as in what you'd call a traditional oven, which would be ideal to just spread it out on a tray and put it in the oven for an hour, soon dry it off, bake it. What I've got is my halogen oven, which is effectively an oven, or a microwave. So those are my two choices. I haven't got a conventional oven. So anyway, let's get the 24 hours over with and see if we've got a usable product. Because if we haven't, then we haven't got to worry about drying it, have we? Right, until the next one. Okay, somebody forgot to do the filming and checking yesterday evening, which would have been 24 hours. So it's had an extra overnight and it's now morning time. So it's been in there longer than the previous soaks, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, this better be the last one. So I'm getting fed up, let's put it that way. Right, as far as the tannings are concerned, I'm happy with that. There's virtually no colour left. Yeah, that's incredibly pale. And while we've got some in the glass, we'll chuck the pH meter in there. Give that a chance to stand and adjust. Oops, still too much. Right, we'll leave that for a bit. And in the meantime, we'll have a look at the TDS. Now, I forget what we started. We started at 35. Now if this is virtually clean now, I'd expect it to be 50 or less. In the real world I expect it to be quite a bit more still. But let's have a look and see. There's one way to find out, isn't there? Stick that lock on, which I don't normally use. It's because inside the bucket's dark and I can't see. Right, that's 97 it says. So that's gone up from 35 to say 95. That's 60 parts per million have come out in that very long soak. And although I'm not happy with that, that's it. That's what it's going to get. My problem now is how the hell am I going to dry it out? Especially at the moment, it's not like I can put it out to bake in the sun because it's showery at the moment. And any minute now I've got to go out and take the car in for its MOT, and then I'll have to get the bus back. So That's going to take a few hours, and I don't want to risk it going out and getting rained on, if you see what I mean. But my big green tray that I normally do my repotting in, if I clean that out, give it a wash, make sure it's clean, and then spread it out in there, and it can go out when it's sunny, if you see what I mean, when I'm here. And then if it looks as though it's you know, not so good out there and possibly going to rain, I can bring it in here again. The water will still evaporate, but it would be, you know, it'd be ideal to sort of put it in a oven and let the, you know, the heat come out quickly. I'm not able to do that, so it'll have to air dry basically with the help of the sun, if and when we get sun. Been complaining about how much we've had. Maybe we could do a little bit more. I'd expect this to be down about 6, but I'll be surprised if it's higher, and pleased. .7, still dropping. Having trouble locking onto a reading. 6.6. So it is slightly acidic. Oh, and I have found out it changes depending on what time of year. But when my water's been through the RO unit, I had a pH meter once that seemed capable of reading pure water, because they can't normally because there's nothing to read, so they just flap about all over the place. And it was 7, which you'd expect. If there's nothing in there, then it's neutral, but it's not. It's often around 6.8, but this is still dropping. It's now it's below 6.5, so it's quite acidic. I'm not happy with that. Worse than moss. Now it depends what that 95 TDS reading is, because if that's still sea salt type salt leaching out, then that would probably account for the drop. Yeah, see, I mean, we're down to 6.4 now, lower than 6.4. It's still dropping. No, it's gone back up to 6.5. They can't get a stable reading in this. Oh, see what it says in the bucket. A good slosh around in there where it's got the bulk. I wish I hadn't done that. It's really dropped down now. 6.4 or less. It's flashing around 6.36, 6.37. Too low. Don't like that at all. Give that a rinse. So what do we do? I'll think on it. I mean, my attitude is that if I used it for an orchid, I would basically flush the orchid quite a few times before I ever fed it, if you see what I mean. So it's going to get more rinses in effect. Plus I wouldn't use it, I'm now going to try and dry this off, bone dry, to store, so that it doesn't get mould or anything like that on it. So to reuse it, I would have to wet it like you would moss. You wouldn't use it bone dry, because as you watered the plant it would soak in so much that you haven't really watered your roots because the media's taken it all. So it will probably need a little soak. So that's yet another rinse, isn't it? So this isn't it as far as it getting near roots is concerned, but I don't like that low pH. But then if I used it, I would probably add charcoal and perlite in with it as well, same as I would with moss nowadays. So anyway, the next thing is to get it dry, and the plant that I specifically wanted this for was the Zygopetalum, and effectively that's in bloom it's not growing new growths at the moment, therefore it's not growing new roots, so it's not getting repotted until such time as I hit that point where, that magic point where the new roots are about to start. And then we can rinse off the old media, not muck about poking and prodding with fragile roots. Just literally run it under the tap and get as much of the old media off as possible, and then pot it up in this stuff with some other bits added. So, you know, it's not as if I'm going to be doing loads of plants in it, but washed and ready to use, I think not. Now the thing is, there are I never thought to look round and see how many different makes and models there were. There are actually other manufacturers I could try that may actually have a better product. But at the moment I've got something that is sort of just about usable, I suppose. Given how much I paid for it, there's no way I would use that as a media for lots of orchids. It's too expensive and too much faff. I'd rather just use moss and repot every year and you know, and just have done with it. Anyway, I mean, moss is acidic, you know, and the older it gets, the worse it gets, and it holds a lot of moisture, so you do have to flush, you know. But this will be difficult to flush once it's wet. It holds an awful lot. So anyway, that's for another day. That's the end of this. I'm not going to add any more video clips on the end of this, so that's done now. You take what you can from it. I mean, I've done it as factual as I can. Rinsing would be better in twice the volume of water, or half the media at a time. There are other ways of going about this that you might get a better result, but I'm not what I would call happy with the result, but I'll probably put up with it. And that's, I'll leave it at that. See you next time.